Welcome, everybody, to DAT Poker Podcast, episode 92, January 19th, 2021. This here podcast is brought to you by Daniel Negreanu's Masterclass of Poker, masterclass.com. Head on over. And I guess there'll be a heads up module coming up soon, but head on over there for some good old learning at the pokers. I'm your host, A. Schwartz, alongside producer extraordinaire Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Tonight, I'm going to put my sausage somewhere.
Mr. Terrence Chan, T, how are you, sir?
I'm doing okay, but I just like to say that out of all the poker podcasters out there, I've by far run the worst. No other poker podcaster has ever run as bad as me. And aside from that, I'm doing pretty good. YouTube bullied me into a haircut. So I hadn't gone to a haircut since COVID started, but the YouTube comments made me cry last week.
That's correct.
I hope you guys like my haircut.
And Mr. Daniel Negreanu, who actually does run the worst in all poker podcasters in the world, maybe.
Here's the deal, right? We're gonna obviously get into this, but when you just finish a session, right? I'm not gonna fake it. I'm like, this is how I feel right now. Motherfucking clock sucking. Look at this flush and this and shit. I'm just, that's just what venting looks like, right? We were super deep. It got emotional. We're like 400 big blinds deep on both tables, and I'm like, fucking right back to back, ace king of spades. Flop the nut flush draw in a big 3-bet pot, end up with the good old sausage left in my hand. So it was absolutely mentally tilted, rage quit, and then went directly into my post-game interview where I went off. But we'll get to it. But yeah.
I want to know if sausage is going to enter the vernacular. Like we used to say you bricked on the river. That's when I was growing up, people would say, I flopped the flush draw, I turned the open-ended straight flush draw, and I bricked the river. That was the expression when we were kids.
Yeah,
now you have sausage.
Horsecock sausage in my hand is what I hit on the river.
All right.
What do you think I had? A nut flush draw, open-ended straight draw, and 2 overs, and on the river I had horsecock sausage in my hand.
So hey,
flop came sausage deuce. Yeah. There was a sausage on the turn.
What in the world is going on?
After last podcast, I felt a lot of pressure when I went to pick my hat for this podcast because I wanted to be cool. But I have 5,000 hats, and I was reefing through them to try and find a cool one, see if I could match the Expos hat from last week. So I'll tell you the 2 that I pulled out. There's this one.
Oh, Junior Mints.
Junior Mints.
A Seinfeld reference as well as a...
Yeah, but here's the one I settled on. Let's see if you guys... recognize this bad boy right here. How about that one that I found in the archives?
Stacked.
That's the stacked video poker game of yours.
Are you shitting me? I have a way better stacked hat than that. With the actual C logo, that can't be my stack. That's not my stacked logo.
Isn't it?
That is not it. That is not my video game logo. I can show you it. It's really, really cool. It's like a C.
Oh.
It's like a chip, and it's red and black. Yeah, so you got... Red and black, PG Poker.
The knockoff hat that I got in Hong Kong, apparently. Yeah.
As far as styles of hats, those are my least favorite by far. They didn't ever fit my head right or whatever. The ones that just have a flat front. I like, a baseball cap that has a brill. I don't know. Look at this hat Ross has got on here.
I got it. I don't know. Thrift store.
It's the Fisherman hat. So Stacked, can you name what year that was, Daniel? Stacked, the video game by Daniel Negreanu?
I couldn't name the year, but it's right behind. Oh, you know what? The logo. Oh, God, I don't even remember. I don't know. It was after 2000. I don't know. It was after 2004 for sure.
I got the wiki pulled up. It's 2006.
Yeah.
And this is how
Stacked the video game has a wiki. That surprises me.
I know, it's crazy, right? So it has this is how it listed. It says featuring the titular professional poker player Daniel Negreanu. Yeah. I had to Google titular. I didn't know what titular was.
This was all before I said horsecock and dick and shit and stuff like that as much. It's just because they don't like that, and some people are afraid of those bad, nasty words. But that was a different time.
It was indeed
different fucking time.
Okay, so let's jump into it. A bunch of stuff to get to this week. The first one is going to be there was a passing of a significant figure in the gaming industry. Since we last did a show, and that was Sheldon Adelson, who owned, or I guess his estate now owns the Venetian and other gambling holdings as well. Longtime advocate, or not advocate, longtime opponent of online gaming, of course. and fought it all the way along. This guy, now it's really hard, right? When somebody passes, and I know you, like myself, I try and be a good person, even if I don't like the person. Like I'm, trying to be that guy. Like, I'm not happy about this guy dying. Now, I'm not really happy about anybody dying, but I'm not sad at all in the slightest. Like this guy was just such a piece of crap in so many things that he did. I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I don't know what you guys thought, but this guy, like, he was the epitome of what the political problems are in the U.S. with buying privilege, and he spent $200 million, I think, on Donald Trump's presidency donations. Tried to break the unions in Las Vegas. Just a whole bunch of terrible things. Aside from what he stonewalled online poker, all that stuff aside, this guy was a terrible human. I don't know what you guys thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if he had never said a thing about online poker or online gaming, I think you would be totally fine to give that eulogy. Like, listen, it's not like you're speaking at this guy's funeral. If you were doing that, you'd be a jerk. I don't get this idea about like this, when somebody dies, you're never allowed to say a bad thing about them ever again in public. I mean, if Sheldon Adelson's family followed you on Twitter, maybe you'd be a little circumspect about it. I don't think they do. I don't think they even follow Daniel on Twitter. So I don't see any hesitation with calling a spade and saying that this was not a nice guy. I think you phrased it perfectly. Buying privileges, like paying people off to enact policies that aren't generally good for society, in my opinion. Like, again, putting aside online gambling, online poker, even ignoring all that, I don't think this was a net positive human being for society, and I think it's okay to say that.
Yeah, so I think there's a case to be made for, and I agree with you guys completely about the idea that like someone dies, it's not like, oh, what a great person if they weren't, Having said that, I think where empathy is allowed or makes sense is for any family or people who did love him for his, good, because I'm sure, listen, people are complicated human beings, right? For as many things as he's done or said that we hated, there are plenty of people that will show you a different side and said, look how generous he was, or, whatever the case may be. So there's always, more complexity to a human being. But as far as his impact on online poker, I have firsthand experience here because I used to, go to Sacramento and I would schmooze with all the politicians when we're trying to, get some of these online poker bills passed in California and other places. We did really well. I'm schmoozing with like 35, all Republicans. This is, before Trump or whatever. And most of them were young and they liked poker and they had no problem with online poker, but they were flat out honest with me saying, yeah, I can't vote for it. And why do you think that is? Is because part of their fundraising, which is required to stay in office, and it's an unfortunate problem with politics in general, is the fact that these guys spend 80% or 90% of their time just raising money for the next campaign, is that, Sheldon literally comes in and says, here's this money. If you vote for that, it's gone. I'm going to cut off funding for you. So they obviously have a choice, right? But it's such a small issue in the bigger scale of things. Like, if the guy paying your bills says, just say no to online poker, you kind of go, okay. It's not going to cause, it's not going to cause you to lose any votes. No one really cares that much about that kind of stuff. So I saw Jessica Wellman say that, this won't have any impact. And I understand what she means from a federal level. Like, it's not like, all of a sudden we're going to have online poker. But one guy, with all these Republican guys that I did meet who had no problem with it, I mean, it's what happened to free market, like they're supposed to be for those principles and ideals and things like that. So, they would all be for it. And I think that frees them up if there is a new bill that is introduced, whether it's state or federal, for them to just vote in the ways that they think, makes sense for them. Now, I don't have a lot of faith or trust in these guys voting for, what they believe to be right versus what they think is politically prudent. But I think it didn't hurt, put it that way. Like him, because he's had a bone to pick with online poker for a long time. And the only reason was because he was not at the forefront of it. He thought it would hurt his business. It had nothing to do with this, moral compass of young people getting their mom's credit card and playing on the internet. That was all just like his limited understanding of how it all works. But it was really just a competitive thing. And he was an incredibly competitive man. He was incredibly competitive. I remember another story. I was sitting with Rob Goldstein, who was the VP at Venetian. We were up there when I was doing that show back here. And he told a story with Sheldon. He was buying an airline, $330 million deal. $330 million deal with a guy. And the guy he's making the deal with, he makes suits. He's a tailor. He's got the deal ready to sign, $330 million. Before he signs, he goes, I want you to throw in 20 suits too, tailor, right? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? We have a deal. Let's just go forward. And he's like, no deal. No deal without the suits. And Rob is like, what do you, like, you're going to literally walk away from this deal? He's like, he'll give us the suits. Right. So this part, like, that's one way you get to be like, you know, kind of.
I don't even know if that's competitive. I think that's just trying to like be an alpha and
you
like
every nickel. Right.
Yeah.
I can't do that. Like, that's that nitty lifestyle where everyone wants to get like, you know, like, oh my God.
That's the thing. I don't think, because like you say, like 20 suits is worth essentially nothing to him. Like, I think, you know, in my opinion, if somebody does that to me, they're showing me that they're the boss. Like they're the man. Like it's more than just
winning, right? He doesn't, for him, it's about winning the deal, right? And getting the maximum amount. And that's like a game for him. It's like, you know, it's fun. And people like that, I can't relate. I don't get it. I don't understand that sort of thing. But yeah, no question. I mean, obviously some people have a take about when someone dies, you should only say nice things about him. I think it's fair to just be honest and at the same point have empathy for his daughter or his family or, you know, for anyone else that was affected and, you know, felt the loss. But as for me, I I give exactly two shits about, you know, this guy. I had no, like you said, Adam, I didn't shed a tear. Like, I didn't know the guy really. I didn't know him. I didn't like what he stood for. I didn't like him. So like, why should I cry for him? I can cry for his family and those people. I wouldn't cry anyway, but like, I'm just saying, empathy for them, but not for, I mean, whatever. He was an old man. He died, whatever.
Yeah, agreed. And about the family part for sure. And to your point about, you know, being charitable, there was reports that he kept the people at the Venetian employed for much longer than others did, you know, when COVID started, because I guess he thought it was good business or cared about his employees or whatever the reason. But he also, you know, advocated for nuking Iran. You know,
yes.
like years ago. So I mean, he's just this weird guy who I guess, you know, wanted to keep everybody poor and then help them out so that they said thanks or something.
Yeah, like he gave the people free trips to Israel. Like it was like one of those things, like if you're of Jewish descent, you get like a free trip to Israel and you get to know your homeland. That's a good thing. That's a good thing he did. Suggesting you should nuke Iran, that's a bad thing when you're one of the most politically influential people in like the whole country by far.
Right, like, think about where he's coming from. So it really it comes down to political ideology, right? If you truly believed in your mind, Israel's, you know, you're from Israel, you're like, you truly believe that Iran is a direct threat and they're trying to kill you and they're trying to do that to you, it's only natural that part of your brain would be to like, no, get them first, right? So you know, it's a little bit of a rabbit hole about like, I disagree with him, of course, and I think most, you know, rational people do, but that ideology is not uncommon and it doesn't innately necessarily make someone bad if they believe that they're doing it for the greater good. Like very few people actually think about it when you ask them, they're like, are you a good person? Most people say, of course I am. And you know, they're not all right, but like everyone.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. We should have empathy and try to like understand, because like we're at a place in, you know, obviously it's brought to the forefront in American politics over the last few weeks and last many years that the two sides are speaking past each other, and there's more than two sides. I hate it when people say two sides because I think there's a lot more than two sides. But when you're demonizing the other side and you're just calling them evil and saying all these things and instead of trying to like reach and understand where people are coming from, like the whole Trump being elected thing was in many ways just like people being upset at the status quo. And it's, you know, and then you get a bunch of people who call every Trump voter is stupid and every Trump voter is a moron. And that's just simply not true. You have a lot of just really pissed off people who are pissed off. And you're right. We should extend a little bit more empathy and understanding to the people who we ideologically disagree with. But at the same time, not going to say RIP Sheldon Adelson because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm just not that good.
All right. Let's move on. Let's move on to what the poker world is following and talking about these days. And again, it is the matches between our very own Daniel Negreanu and Mr. Doug Polk that have been continuing. We're through 17,000 hands now. Doug, the lead sort of is around 700,000, which it's been, you know, off and on for the last little while. You ran off, I think, 5 straight wins, and then Doug's won, I think, the last 3 to get some of that back. The last session was particularly interesting. Here's how I watch these matches, and I watch most of them. I'll wait till it's over, and I'll go to YouTube, and I'll find one of the feeds, and instead of sitting through it for 4.5 hours or whatever it ends up being, I kind of look for big pots, and I'll watch those and see how it goes down. And it's sort of entertaining way to watch it because you see all the explosions and stuff. And then, so yesterday's, I caught both post-game interviews, which were fantastic. Daniel, as mentioned off the top of the show, was super tilted about, you know, just venting, and, you know, he missed a couple of big draws and overcards and such. And then I guess, I don't know if it gets relayed to Doug or whatever, or if he watched exactly what, Daniel said or anything, or if it was the people who were telling him. But he then turned around and said that Daniel's the luckiest person he's ever played against, which was kind of funny. So we got two guys both saying that they're both running bad, and the whole poker world was watching. It's fascinating to watch. Daniel, sort of your thoughts, I guess, currently and where the match stands.
Okay, so I have a lot to say on this, right? Obviously, because it's been fresh. But so here's the deal. As I mentioned, soon as I just click off, I go on to do this interview. Of course, I'm going to vent. I'm going to say things that are irrational. I'm going to be all crazy and sausage and whatever, because I'm just being authentic and real and whatever, And where does that come from? Part of it is it's my own ego, entitlement, this, frustration or whatever like that. So that's just kind of one way that I do, that handle that. I think it was relayed to him improperly. Someone was suggested I said he's the luckiest player ever or luckiest person. I didn't say that. I said in this challenge, he's so fucking lucky. He has no clue how lucky he's been, right? Because for my perception, that's been true. And so I think for him, similarly to me, I think that if I had to guess, I don't think it's much of a guess. I think hearing that from his perspective is it's sort of, he takes that personal, as though me suggesting that he's not good or that he's just been only lucky and it's the only reason he's winning and that he actually sucks or anything like that, which isn't true. So now when you think about historically, when I'm playing games and there was a sucker at the table who's the big fish, in this case, I'd be that guy who's complaining about his bad luck, right? The true hustlers, right? That, they understand it's not, I don't have to prove the guy wrong. I don't have to go oh, you know what though? You've been lucky. Do you remember this hand? You just go, yeah, man. Yeah, Robert, poor you, right? And that's what hustlers do, right? But, for Doug, he's got a little ego himself, right? And I think he was challenged. So he came back with well, look at this hand. You were lucky here, you were lucky there, and all this kind of stuff. And then he suggested, and this is where I laughed. I actually couldn't stop laughing. He says he thought it was a top 10% run that I've been on of any opponent he's played. And he's referencing the fact that I didn't get stacked for 2,000 hands or something like that as his version of luck. And I would propose this, okay, to settle it, right? I would propose releasing all the hands, my hands and his, okay? I will bet, and this is the best way for me to get even in the challenge because it's a fucking slam dunk. I will bet $1 million right now. This is a real offer. Whoever wants to take it, $1 million that in all the areas I will list that if I've either run good, average, or below average, okay, bad, if you will. I will bet $1 million that in the first half of this match, let's say up to the first 12,500 hands, that I've run bad in the following situations. All in EV, which we already know is a fact, so that's a given, right? Completing draws, straights and flushes, both front door and back door, specifically in the meaningful pots, 3 and 4 bet pots. I would bet I've run below expectation versus him, and that he's run better in those spots than I have. I would also bet that I've had worse runouts where, say, for example, you flop a set and the board runs out a 4-card straight and a flush and 4 flush, right? Stuff like that. Really bad runouts where you either have to fold your hand or you get bad value, stuff like that. So now, and the last one, and this one, I would actually lay a massive price. Massive on this one. The first, in the first 12,000 hand match, natural 2-pair, where you're not you have kings and the board runs out 4-4, where you have king 7 and you hit a king and a 7. Natural 2-pair, okay, that I lost at least in the first 12,005 hands. I've had 2-pair or better beat at least at a 2-to-1, if not, I think it's more 4-to-1. I would bet at least 2-to-1, probably 3 or 4, that I've had that hand lose that much more often than he did. In spots like that. If there are any other metrics of luck that people want to add to this list to make a $1 million bet, I could use the money because I'm stuck $700K right now. And this is the biggest slam dunk. So here's the question, right? I will put my money where my mouth is. I'm willing to wager $1 million on this. If he truly believes that I've had the sun run of all sun runs in the top 10% of anyone he's ever played against, it would be an easy slam dunk. I call $1 million bet. Right?
So would there be a handicap of the categories you're listing? Would you have to be perfect in all of them?
This is such a vague.
I'm open. That's the thing. Is I'm open to calculating it literally any way you want in all the ways because I'm so confident on this. Because here's the thing.
So you think you would check every single one of those boxes, and if you got one of those wrong, you would lose the bet?
No. I'm saying overall, if you factor in all these things, would you take a panel of say 5 professional poker players?
Okay.
the majority of them say he ran well, he ran average, or he ran below average. And here's the thing, like, he doesn't see a lot of the hand that I see. He doesn't see a lot of the hands where,
But that's true for him too. That's true
No,
other way too. You don't see his hands.
I
You
wonder
don't
if
see the draws that he missed. You don't see that.
But there's a lot more hands. There's a lot more hands that go the other way, where he's going all in the river and I'm folding them the opposite. But that's neither here nor there. I will bet significant amount of money, as I said, that in all those variables, and we could include others if he found them, worthwhile to do, or if anybody else. It doesn't even have to be him to bet the million. I'll take the million from anybody who wants it. If you'd like to bet, all in EV, completing draws, especially in 3 and 4 bet pots, is a separate category. Bad runouts with value hands that turn to shit, and then also losing with 2 natural pair or better. In those categories, and if there is more that you want to add, let me know. But in all those categories, each one of them, I believe that he's run better than I have in those spots. Now, again, what's important here is I'm not slighting the guy by suggesting this. I'm not saying I'm better than him. I've never said that. I've never even come close to saying that. He's clearly the favorite going into this, right? And as I said, I don't have a problem losing, right? I feel like I've been unlucky, and I'm entitled to that belief. He can believe what he wants, but I will put $1 million cash. Because again, the best way for me to get even right now, it's going to be hard to win back $700K playing. So I can just maybe finagle somebody into making this bet and then print. Because it's so, I mean,
it's hard. I get what you're doing. I think in practice, this is almost an impossible task to measure this. So there's a lot of things other than that. If you wanted to ask me for categories, well, there's, there's a lot of categories that are sort of in the realm of luck and sort of not, right? So things like making the second best hand. So for example, how often does somebody make top pair against second pair? How often did both guys make top pair, but one guy's a better kicker? These are also luck things that are largely out of the control of anybody. But sometimes you make a heroic laydown with top pair, no kicker on a scary board. So is that a luck thing or is that not a luck thing?
Right. I'm going to discount skill, right? Because obviously there's a lot of spots. For example, he claims he bluffed me on this one hand, which is fine, but it's still unlucky for me. I 3-bet him with ace king of clubs. The flop came jack 9-5 with 2 clubs. I bet the flop, pretty big size, and we're very deep. The jack paired the turn. I bet again. He called. The river was like a blank deuce. I checked my ace king, and he went all in. Good play with queen 10. He bluffed me. Having said that, after that flop, that's still a pretty fucking unlucky run out for me, to miss everything, when I have that many outs. And then for him to, the fact that he made a good play, that's just because he's a really, really good player. But it's still unfortunate for me to have that hand in that situation on the flop and somehow find, miss everything.
Right. What I'm saying more is that even if we take it correctly, let's say you've missed more flush draws and more straight draws, we can definitely go through all hand histories and verify whether that's true or not. That's an easily quantifiable thing. But then there's these other weird things too, where you flop things you flop a flush draw and you end up making a pair. How do we count?
So you can easily solve that. You could, if you had both sets of hands, you could go through and calculate the EV in all streets.
Well, I don't know if it works exactly like that, simply because there's bad. But here's the thing. Like I said, as far my assertion is, in these areas that I listed, in those specific areas, I've run bad. Maybe I will concede that it's possible that in other areas, like Terrence mentions, maybe having top pair versus middle pair, or whatever the case may be, that I've run decent in those. But in terms of meaningfulness and major big pot, big spots, which is pretty much the ones I've covered, I'd be willing to bet $1 million on this specifically. And if you wanted to throw a variable or a suggestion that you felt would even the playing field, I'm all ears to do that. Because again, like I said, the best way for me to get even right now would be to wager $1 million on this.
I wonder if there's something to it in the different styles, Daniel, because, and I think Doug was talking about this in his post-match interview, and that was his, winning without showdown was, I don't know, he said he'd think between $1 million and $1.5 million, where your style is more to rely on making hands and getting paid off by him, and his style is more about, picking up pots by bluffing a lot of the times, right?
Right. So what you're referencing is the skill edge, right? Which again, we've conceded. I've conceded that he's more skilled, right?
Is it skill though? I'm not sure that it is skill. It's just different styles in that, you can play a winning style.
Well, yeah, no, it is a different style, but that has no effect on real luck, really, right? If you're factoring in all the questions that I had in terms of how I'm, willing to make this bet, how he plays or how I play isn't all that relevant to what actually occurred. You know,
but it's relevant to what hands get shown, right? Like you're
I'm talking about all the hands that would get shown. So everything would get shown.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
And obviously hands that don't go to the river. Let's say, for example, I raised the turn with a draw, right? And then he folded. Like that doesn't count as anything, right? Because like I might have got there, I might not have got there, but we won't know. So that doesn't count as whether or not you made the flush or not. You know what I'm saying? But in terms, like I said, so from a skill edge, I'm sure his red line is beautifully, you know, perfect. But also there's a cost for a red line too. And I think we sort of discussed this before, where sometimes you could pay a lot of money to guarantee you win the red line, right? Yeah. If me and you played heads up, Adam, 100 big blinds deep, and I went all in every single hand, right? I would destroy you. I win every single time without showdown, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's a winning strategy, right? Because if I call correctly, you know, I will get EV because you've overextended yourself. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's what's happening with him. Just suggesting that that's not it's not the only barometer.
The guy who bluffs more is going to win more without showdown. Like that's like almost certainly right. The guy who has a higher bluff frequency percentage when both guys are playing reasonably well.
Well, not only that,
going to win more pots without showdown.
It's not just the bluffing frequency.
Frequency and sizing.
It's also the sizing, and obviously, you know, in the beginning of the match, in the first, couple weeks, I was used like 20 or 75% sizing. That's it. So there wasn't going to be as many spots where I make this big bomb bet that he has to fold more, right? Because when somebody bets bigger, you have to fold more. So if he's using sizes that are 3x pot, 4x pot, that limits the correct range that I can call with. So if he's doing that and I'm not doing that, by default, his red line's going to be better. As I've gotten, more accustomed to more sizes and things like that, it's allowed me to start, winning some pots as well in that vein where, I'm betting 1.5x pot on the river and, he doesn't always call, right? Like sometimes he calls if he has a hand that makes sense, but I win back some of it there. So anyway, I mean, it's a silly argument, but like, here's the thing, right? If when the sucker's bitching and whining about running bad, you're supposed to just pat him on the head and go, okay, you win. That's not the kind of guy he is, because obviously he has to take it personal, or as though I'm slighting him, which isn't the case. As I said, he's really, really great. He's a great player, was considered the best at this format. I decided to take it on. But listen, you got to give the guy a fucking moment to have his little, fucking whining, pity party. And that's what I do. I have my little veg party or my little pity party. I'm over it. I can move past it. But as I said, fucking offers on the table. Anybody listening, anybody who wants it, $1 million, I'll fucking post it. You get access to both hands and on the criteria I said, and you have every right to like push back with some new stuff if you'd like.
It is a good point, because you mentioned about the treating the suckers well. It does bring up, like, I don't know if I'm even particularly proud of this, because I don't think I would do it today. But back when I was in my prime in Limit Hold'em, I used to play. So like the On Game Network, you guys probably remember the On Game Network. It had many skins, and you were just allowed to
contact poker.
Oh yeah, you were. I'm pretty sure I played. I'm pretty sure I had this. It might have even been my full contact poker skin. Who knows? But one of the accounts that I had, because you were allowed to have accounts on different skins and nobody cared in those days. I had a girl's name. And I would play like 150, 300, 200, 400 heads up. I think it was just 150, 300. And I would beat people who were really bad, and they would bitch and moan and whine and chat. And I had this girl's name, and I was be very, very sympathetic and nice. And like, I don't feel necessarily like proud about this like now, but back in the day, I was more of a hustler. I was really, just grinding hard and doing my thing. And it's true. Like if you got someone on the hook and they just believe that they're going to run bad, and if they're believing they're running bad, you should do everything in your power to convince them that they are running bad.
Well, I do want to say one thing. So if you were a true hustler, like, you wouldn't see Phil Ivey or Nick Schulman or the guys who depend on poker for a living for the rest of their lives. They would never do something like that. Doug, and I'm sure that he would make this argument, is like, he doesn't give a shit, right? Yeah. He's got this match. It's already locked in. He doesn't give a fuck. He can push back. He can fire back some own shit. He's like, you suck, whatever. You played this bad. You did this wrong. Because he doesn't really care. Going forward, like, he's not trying to like coddle me into, playing the rest of the match, because I've already agreed to play the rest.
Well, he's trying to play Doyle, heads up. There's clearly a little hustler in him.
Yeah, I guess. But anyway, the point is like, he will get his, regardless of the way this match ends up, in 25,000, there's a very good chance that I would offer a rematch.
Ooh,
if I were to lose. And if, of course, I am able to come back and win, that would be on the table as well, because I've enjoyed it, frankly. I think it's been fun. I can afford it. And I feel like it's definitely improved my game going forward. I'm looking at, if it's not him, I'll take on somebody else probably and continue to do these challenges. I'd love to play on GG Poker because I don't know, man. I'm just kidding. Like, that's the thing. That's what I realize is, like, when you play online and especially when you play heads up and crazy shit happens, you start to wonder. And it's like, I get why people, and I mean, it's absurd for me to even think something like that, but you get how people can play that sometimes in their head. Like, what the fuck's going on with this RNG? Right?
Yeah. I mean, if I was going to advise you to be careful about something in your post-game interviews, like, I get you're in the post-game interview, you're in the moment, and you don't want to censor and filter yourself. I do think you're causing a lot of harm when you sort of make those like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like,
well, I'm joking.
I don't really think it's rigged, but like, I'm
actually just mocking. I'm mocking the whole idea, really, because I'm joking.
Yeah.
I actually don't think it's rigged. But
I know, but it doesn't come off like that way. When because I watched it too, and I was just like, that's not great. Like, you're the biggest like poker ambassador in the game. Like, yeah, let's stay away from that stuff. That's just me, but you do you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would love you to play on GG Poker too. But my one thing is I would love for you to play like other games against people. I would derive some enjoyment. Like, No Limit Hold'em. I know it's the thing, and I know it's what the people want to see. I see Adam nodding his head too. Like, some game that has like 3 cards, 4 cards, and 5 cards. I would love to see that shit and see you take on some.
Well, I don't think I would ever play Phil Galfond because he's just never loses, it seems like. So at PLO, and he's just like way too good at that.
Well, there's all these games where you get 5 cards down. Nobody knows what any of them are. There's all these games where you get 2 cards down and 1 card up.
I would do this.
Let's do a list.
I would do a thing where, like, every session you start and you literally make up a game on the spot. Like, you have all these variables, you spin a wheel, and now you play like 9 card Omaha, spades beat clubs, whatever the fuck, and just like make up a game and play it in real time. And then the next day or the next session, you play a completely different game. So that's like, you don't have time to actually, use anything but your poker brain. I would do
like a random wheel, right? Like, you put 8 really fun games on a random wheel, spin it, and then we're playing.
No, not that. That's not what I'm talking about. Because now you have 8 predetermined games, right? So now it's one of these 8 games. You can study for one of these 8 games. I'm talking about literally, okay, you spin a wheel for how many cards you get.
Oh, I see.
You spin a wheel for whether it's high-low. You spin a wheel for if it's 9 or higher, 8 or higher, 6 or higher. You spin a wheel for flushes beat straights. You spin a wheel for short deck. You spin a wheel for like all these different things. So you literally you don't play one of 8 predetermined games. You literally just make shit up as you go. Or you could even do this. You could even play a challenge where one person has 24 hours to come up with a game, whatever they want to play, and then you play it, and then vice versa. And you play like a set number of hands. I would do stuff like that because I think it's interesting in a different way, because it's sort of like having to figure it out on the spot. A guy like Phil Ivey would be the one player I would not want to play in this format, because he's such a card savant that he just figures shit out so quickly, without the use of, he figured out a lot of things before anyone else did. And now with solvers being available, it's changed the way in which it sort of levels the playing field to a certain degree about if you're good at study and you're good at downloading data, you can get really, really good without having to actually do any of the what do you call it? You don't have to figure the game out yourself. You can just, like, if you know how to use, a solver properly, you can input the data. And if you do that correctly, obviously that's a little bit of a skill in itself. Then, you can learn how to play virtually any game pretty well. But if you create the game out of nothing, you can start making your guesstimations and stuff, but it's not going to be based on anything but your poker mind.
I'd love to watch, top players play No Limit Deuce. That game is so much fun to play. I love playing it, but I also would love to watch top players play No Limit Deuce.
It's hard without without whole cards exposed, because
with whole cards. Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, I agree. Like, if somebody if you managed to play a whole cards up 30-minute delayed stream of No Limit Deuce and other draw games, I'm all about it.
Be fun.
All about it. And you've always liked draw games, Daniel, from what I know about you. I mean, you wrote the Doyle chapter on triple draw. So,
well, I mean, obviously love triple draw and I love single draw. I don't know how much I love single draw as a made for TV type game, because it's kind of slow. I mean, heads up might be more interesting, or might be even less. I'm not really sure. Because, well, with heads up, you're forced to play like, some 2 and 3 card draws and stuff like that, which is really weird, especially depending on what your opponent's sizing. If your opponent's like min raising and there's an ante, well, you can draw 3. now, which is kind of crazy. Whereas if you're playing 7 max, you're not really doing that. But it is a pure poker game in a lot of ways. It's one that you'd want to play live. Otherwise, like the problem with that game, say for example, if you were going to play it on the internet, way too easy to solve it.
Easy to solve.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can literally know, like, all right, you bluff with these specific blockers, you don't with this, you size this with this, you randomize everything so that you're playing perfect GTO, and you could literally just, it would be way easier to play that as a human being actually playing at Game Theory Optimal versus trying to emulate it. You could actually play that game perfectly with the right software, I would imagine.
All right, let's move on. High Stakes Poker is moving along. I believe they're through 5 episodes of season 8, and absolutely entertaining. I know we talked about it before. I don't know if you guys have caught up. We're going to shame Terrence into keeping caught up with the.
Not this week. Not this week.
Me neither.
Oh, you're slightly busy, but it's been fantastic. There was $1 million pot, and I'll just quickly run it down for you guys. It was really fun to watch. So it's a long story, but it ends up. There's $1 million in the middle, and Dwan has queens. Lynn G.
You're gonna yada. I'm gonna throw out a Seinfeld reference. You're gonna yada $1 million.
I'm gonna yada this hand for sure. Yeah. And this woman who's in the game, Lynn G, I believe his name. She's got the Queen 10 hearts, and Bobby has Ace King suited. So they decide to run it 3 times for whatever reason.
They're not all in pre-flop though.
They're all in pre-flop, and they're going to run.
She's all in pre-flop with the Queen 10 of suited?
Yeah, she shoved and got called a couple of
times. All right. Okay.
But anyways, yeah, so they decided to run 3 completely separate boards, which Dwan, I think, turns to Nick and during the hand and says, I've never run it 3 times with 3 entire boards in his entire life. But anyways, it was amusing because Dwan swept all 3, spoiler alert, with the queens, which was hard to do. But anyways, yeah.
Like when your queens is dead too, so you can't redraw against the Ace King suited.
Yeah. Well, she flopped open ender and then turned a flush draw on the first board and bricked off. But
and then what'd she end up with on the river?
She didn't have a sausage in her hand.
Yeah, on the river. She ended up with fucking, well, she wouldn't have a dick.
I don't know if you can say that.
So she didn't have one, right?
Yeah.
She had no sausages at all. 0 sausages.
It'd be weird to grab somebody else's, right? Just like, grab a sausage.
So that busted the 2 of them, and they cashed out, and Jay Kuhn sat down. So I'm looking forward to the next episodes with Jay Kuhn.
Wait, Jay Kuhn replaced a player who got all in pre-flop with Queen 10 suited for like $333,000 in a.
And Bobby.
That's a rough.
I wouldn't expect an old lady to fold.
Yeah, rough trade. So check that out, pokergo.com for all the latest ones. Are they they're not streaming them anywhere else other than Poker Go, right? Like they're not on a television channel of any.
I don't think they're on YouTube. No.
So head on over to check those out. Promo code Daniel, I think probably still works if you're still haven't signed up for somehow or another to pokergo.com. Moving on, I noticed this tweet, Daniel, was interesting. GG Masters, the tournament each Sunday, is a year old this week. They started, was it 250K they started at? And now you're up to 500K guaranteed each week. Just obviously a massive success with this, and the sky's the limit. You think about the way that PokerStars started with the Sunday Million with the guarantees and just went up and up and up, and that seems to be what's happening with GG. And I guess the people at GG have to be real happy about how this has really caught on the GG Masters.
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. As you mentioned, a 250K guarantee for this format without reentry, without like a long period, was really aggressive, especially with like, if you look at how far GG's come since then. They didn't have the numbers yet on the site to really support this kind of guarantee. And then we missed the guarantee, and what do? They kick it up. And we missed the guarantee, and then they keep kicking it up, because they were so thrilled to even get close. And it's funny because like I think of the GG Masters as the flagship event at GG Poker. And I love the fact that it's pure poker, and there's a big carrot at the end of the year for, the leader, but it's a freeze out format. There's no like busting a pro 3-4 times. I love the purity of it, and I'm glad that, we're going to continue it again for another year. But when I think about like that was the big stick, and then since then, we've affiliated ourselves with the World Series of Poker. We've grown, we've running circuit events, we ran the World Series of Poker. It's kind of like time to reminisce when I think back like a year. to what's grown. And I'm glad to see that, again, the GG Masters is still a big part of the Sunday schedule. And there's been there's been varying buy-ins on it now too, and stuff like that. I think the record, they had one that had like almost 10,000 players, like 9,200 players in it. Again, so for those of you that are poker purists who just want a good, sort of reasonably priced, fair game, and that everyone starts with the same amount of chips and it goes to the end, this is for you. And then recently they came out with another one that actually a little bit, it's just a genius idea. And it's sort of like a take off of a little bit, I guess, of what Full Tilt used to do with Flip and Goes or whatever like that. Where now, you get 3 cards to start, right? And you get to see the other cards. So there's a little bit of skill. And then you throw one away, like pineapple style. Now you play an all-in spot, okay? If you win your table, you're in the money, and now you play for the real money. In addition to that, you can choose how many stacks you want to start with. So, if everyone starts with 1, you could be like, I just want to win this thing. I'm going to buy 10 stacks or whatever like that. So you can start with a bigger stack. And then you just continue to play all in hands until there's one winner on the table. And then it plays out as normal. I think for a lot of people who don't have, who don't want to waste 4 hours trying to squeak into the money, here, you're either in the money or you're not. And now you have the thrill of playing the end game, where you're playing down to the final table and stuff like that. It also solves a major issue, which everyone hates, which is bubble play. Right? There's no longer.
That's me. I hate the fucking bubble.
Right. There's no more fucking tanking for the bubble or whatever. Now you're either in the money or you're not. And now that you're in the money, what? You're gonna try to get a pay jump 18 people ahead. That's minimal. Nah, whatever. So it really alleviates the worst part of tournament poker. So for those of you that are interested in that, check that out on GG Poker. I think their buy-ins right now, and I could be wrong, $25 max. I think, I'm not sure, and they run every 30 minutes or something like that. But check it out. It'll be there in the lobby.
All right, let's move on to some tweets.
You're going surfing on the internet.
T, you got a couple.
That's not me. Who is that? I think that's Ross.
Oh, Roscoe.
Yeah, I posed this question to you earlier. What was it?
It's so you're quote tweeting somebody, some random
Dan O'Brien. So it's Dan O'Brien, and he says,
but the quote tweet reference is, you'd rather date someone that's and the 2 choices were astrology or Trump. Right. Is this the one we're talking about?
That's what it broke down to. Yeah. So,
yeah.
And astrology won pretty handily, right? 69%. I think.
I never clicked the results on that one, but
yeah, which is, pretty obvious, right? I think somebody who likes astrology is probably or a lot of the times is somebody probably just having some fun with it, rather than they believe that because the planet was over there.
The best response I thought I saw on this was something like, either way, you're getting somebody who's out of touch, who doesn't understand reality. But in the case of what exactly? Either way, you're getting somebody who's out of touch with reality. But in one case, you're also getting a person who has no empathy.
Yeah. This resonated with me because my girlfriend has recently moved in with some other people, and one of them is super into astrology, and she's not. And we get in these debates with this girl where we're like, we just don't believe it whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, I like Dan's point where he says, I have more confidence I could talk someone out of their Trump position, because this astrology stuff, man, this is like a cult for people my age. It's like so many girls are so into it.
The brain, what is it? The brain is a pattern finding organ, right?
Yeah.
It's this weird thing, but all right, moving on. I asked, I put out there on Twitter if anybody had anything that they'd like us to throw around, and one of them was Alex Huang, and he tweeted back. I thought this was an interesting question. Present day DN versus start of challenge DN in a 25K hand heads up challenge. What are fair odds on present day Daniel?
Ooh, what would you lay to play yourself at the beginning of the challenge?
I'm going to take a stab at this. We'll go around. How about Daniel goes last and gives us his opinion? Based on nothing but watching some of the hands play out, I'm going to say present day Daniel. I mean, again, it's 25,000 hands, so Daniel theoretically is going to learn the
old Daniel is going to be 12,500 hands better is going to be current Daniel at this point. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess what are fair odds on present day winning the challenge is what Alex is asking. So a money line, I'm going to say is like present day Daniel would be minus 160 would my complete stat in the park.
My bet is smaller. I think it's probably like minus 125. Like I think Daniel would have improved a lot, but I think luck is still probably too overwhelming of a factor to lay minus 160. But
Ross?
Daniel?
No, Ross. What do you got, Ross?
Yeah. Me? I'm going to take the high. I think Daniel's going to set this line much higher. So I'm going to say minus 225.
What? All right.
Wow. Okay, Daniel?
That's incredible that he literally said 225 because that was my initial thought was 2.5. Then I said, no, 225 is the right number. And then as you guys were speaking, I was like, no, more like 2. Because one of the key things is this that I've learned like from doing this challenge is like how important variance, how much invariance would play a role. So while I think I'm a whole lot better than I was back then, I mean, significantly better. You mentioned one other key factor is that like old me would get better too. Like if old me stayed old me and then new me and like neither got better, now it's much more than 2 to 1. You know, probably 3.5.
Old you is luckier too, according to Doug.
Yeah. So I think I would lay. I think you guys are probably in the right ballpark. I was going to say about 2 to 1, but that might be high.
I think it's more interesting to think of these things more in the beginning.
Like again, the key factor is whether or not I would learn because when I started week 1, I was using 2 sizes, which is very limiting and gives up a lot of EV. And now I'm using a lot of sizes, so I'm getting making more EV in situations. So like that alone is worth a pretty hefty chunk. So if that stayed that way, like if 2075 me as my only options, and that was like all I could do, versus me now, I would lay like 3-4 to 1.
Right. I think that's why when I saw these bets going around, I think like doing the BB per 100 handicap makes a lot of sense. Like I don't remember what the market price is, but I remember there were like some 8 BB 100 and 12 BB 100 ones. I think that's the one that makes more sense is like because when you're just talking about a fixed number of hands like 25,000, like you can win by like $1 or you can win by $1 million and it's kind of the same result. So that makes it a little bit trickier to handicap. I think laying the BB per 100, like another way. So if I were to phrase this question different than the person who wrote it, I would say, how many BB per 100 do you think you are better than you were at the beginning of the challenge?
Yeah, no, that's a good question too. Like looking at this one right now, I'm like 10 with all NEV adjusted. Like I'm down like 5 or 6 losing to him. And that's been, obviously it was much higher in the beginning. And that, obviously there was a point where he was up 950,000. I think that was at its peak. It was up like, he was winning like 20 big blinds per 100, 10 adjusted. So if I had to play myself, I would spot me now against old me that could only use 2075 and never get better. Because I think that's a better question, right? Because I learn fast and I learn quickly. I would give that guy like 6.5 big blinds per 100.
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah, that's almost as much as people thought that Doug was a favorite over yours. That's quite a lot.
Okay, how many big blinds would you lay Phil Hellmuth to play him right now for 12,500 hands?
That's a great question.
Play that format, I would give him a lot. I mean, a whole lot.
Don't blow up his spot, Adam.
Especially
he's actually considering this.
Especially if we could play deep, right? Like where there was a stipulation, like because he likes to rat hole. He likes to like start with 100 big blinds and just play it like a tournament where he's like sitting on 12 bigs, which obviously lowers your, you can't felt a guy from 12 big blinds, whatever. So he would have to play with the auto top up, same format. I would give him, let's say, you would imagine he gets better. I think at the start of the match, I would be 20 to 25 big blinds per 100 feet. Wow. Easily, like that much. Then, but he would get better. He would get better. So I would probably spot him half that. So like 12 and a half.
Wow. Shots fired. Can I get a shot?
Well, listen, I mean, the guy, here's the reason why. Because Phil is very resistant. He's just very resistant to doing anything differently than he does. Like, he's not going to be like, all right, I'm going to embrace learning solvers and I'm going to learn. He thinks he's just going to trap me. He's just going to sit there, limp in on the button, check 3 times, and then, stab at it and hope that, like, he can win his small pots there. And it would just be, I actually think the standard deviation with that match would be incredibly low, too. Like, if you notice, even with the Doug match, I won 5 straight sessions. I think that was a total of, like, 5 buy-ins. He won 3 straight sessions. I think it's a total of 3 buy-ins. So we're like averaging like 1 buy-in per session, which is really low. Like he mentioned that a lot of the matches that he plays, they go through really big swings. And you have that with guys who, use like really big bet sizing and do a lot of shenanigans. With Hellmuth, in the way that he plays, he plays a very protect style. So the way that you beat him is you would really just grind him down. Like, it's not like he's going to be doing a lot of big robbing you in big pots. So your edge comes from getting away from spots where he just isn't bluffing correctly. There's going to be spots where Hellmuth is like betting it all, but he just does not get to that spot with enough bluffs. Because he doesn't think about his range construction in that way. Like, he's a tournament player. He just thinks about like, this guy's a fish. He's just going to call me. Antonio's going to pay me off or whatever, right? Whereas if you play against a really good player who starts to notice that, wow, this guy's way under bluffing here, you learn that you can like just print EV by folding against a player like Phil. Obviously you play against a guy like Doug, that doesn't work because he does bluff correctly. He bluffs, I don't know if, it's hard to know for sure if he bluffs more or less than GTO. And the only way, only person that knows that is him, because he gets to see the hands that I don't, which is the hands where, he bets 4X on the river. Like, there was a hand yesterday. It was kind of an interesting one. We got super deep, okay? Crazy 400 big blind deep. Spot where I had like Jack 5. The board is like ace 3, 4, 6. He check raised the flop. He bet the turn 6. The river was a deuce, rainbow. So I have the 6 high straight. He checks. There's like 10 big blinds in there, something small. I bet 30% pot, very small bet, targeting like, I don't know, aces up or something like that. And he check raised my three big blind bet to 164. He check raised to 164, right? So now, what do you do here when you're sitting here? I have Jack 5, okay? So you have the straight, okay?
Like, intuitively, I think you're supposed to fold, but I mean, I don't know like all the action, but I mean, like, so you have 1-5, so you can have 12 combos of 7-5, and then the rest of them, like, but he can't bluff like all of 7X. So like,
what are his bluffs? His bluffs are going.
They're all 7X. They all have a 7 in them. Yeah.
No.
Oh, it's a 5 to take half.
He's not. I mean, what do you think? He's a random 7, just fucking YOLO, maybe once in a blue moon, but
I don't know. Yeah, like 1 every 200 hands or something. Yeah.
But he would need to, for the most part, he would need to be blocking the 5.
Yeah. Okay.
7 obviously matters, but like, he's basically, when he's doing that, he's going to have a 5 a lot.
Yeah.
And just check raise, because it's very unlikely that I have 7-5, so he just goes for like extra spots. So the correct answer is, obviously, like with most things, is you're supposed to call a percentage of the time and fold a percentage of the time, right? The exact frequency for that, that a solver output will tell you that, but it's not a spot where you go, shit, I got a straight, I just call.
Did you run it? Did you run it in the solver and find out how often you're supposed to call?
I mean, I haven't even run that one yet. We're going to do that after this.
Yeah, but that's a curious one. I really love to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's betting. It's a very, very big bet.
Intuitively, like, I think you're supposed to fold more often than not, but I mean, I could be overfolding.
So here's the thing: you're basically your range there when you're betting is like pretty much always a 5 or 5-7, right? So you wonder, like, one of the questions you ask yourself when you're using solver is like, do you have enough combos of 7-5 to just call when you have 7-5 and fold when you have a 5, right? And are you up against the player who's bluffing that spot at the right frequency? A lot of variables to think about in a spot like that. The safe play, if you will, is to fold, right? But it's it's a good play from him if he feels like my 7-5 always raises turn, which is inaccurate. It's just not true. But if you believe that, now he's got like a free check.
Or if your 7-5 doesn't bet small often enough, if he thinks
exactly that line that I take where I just call and only bet 30%.
Yeah.
Now it would be really sexy to do that with the specific intent, but this was the first time I've seen a play like that, and it's a function of how deep we are, right? There was a lot more massive check raises, big turn bets, and huge stuff in spots, because it's a whole new world when you're playing 300 plus, and we haven't played that. We played both tables 300 plus, where you can get away with doing these things where you bet like 30x pot. I'm like, what the fuck? You don't really do that when you're 100 big blinds deep, because 30x pot is all in, right? It's just a jam. Whereas here, you can force people to say, from a GTO perspective, only call with like the top one, let's say 1% of their range. And how often are they going to have that? Not often. So if you make that play, it's kind of like that whole argument we had about redlining, right? It works every time, but the one time that it doesn't, you lose back like 100x. So there's a trade-off, right? There's a trade-off. Like winning the red line is valuable because you get to pick up a lot of dead money. But when you spend a lot to do that, and you know the person does have it, you give back a lot of that. So like if you win, let's say 5 pots in a row with 10 big blinds in them, all right, you just picked up 50 big blinds with the worst hand, and now you bomb 150, and he calls and you lose, you're stuck 100 overall. So it's not as simple as just like, we'll just start going all in every hand. You know, it doesn't work that way.
So I didn't hear the result. Did you fold?
I folded. I folded it.
Yeah.
I rolled it. So I'm not going to tell you what I rolled, but what rolling means is, you know, it's how I play, and everyone does now. You have a random number generator, and it gives you a number from 1 to 100. And so you guesstimate, say, for example, before looking at the number, you think, you know, I'm supposed to call here. I'm just going to throw out a random number 20% of the time. Okay. So if I rolled 1 to 20, I would call. And if I roll anything else, it would be a fold. That way, in those spots, you can guarantee that you're calling at the correct GTO frequency. You would adjust that if you were playing against a player who you thought didn't bluff enough in that spot. You might lower it significantly. Or if you thought a player bluffs too often in this spot, then you might, you know, deviate from that as well. But it's definitely a interesting and fun new way to think about the game. I think back to like our era, 2004 or whatever, and all this discussion about the way that the natural, normal way that people learn to play poker is so alien to people from that era. Like whenever I bring this stuff up to people from then, like whether it's Matiso, like he texted me just now about, why don't you start like calling with your big hands and then just leading the flop? Like that was his new big advice. He wants me to just flat with like my big hands and then lead the flop and then just go pot because he'll think I'm bluffing. Right?
And not everybody.
People in general are really afraid of me.
Yeah, but it's, you know, but a lot of people, the majority of people, I would say from our era that, you know, have not ventured into sort of the new world thinking. It's completely alien. Like even thinking about like the term combos. Okay. When I first heard it, when the Germans were talking, I was like, holy shit, I don't know anything about this fucking game. The way they're talking about it, you know, they're like, well, you don't have many combos with queen 10 then. I'm like, what do you mean by combos? I either have queen 10 or I don't. Like, no, there were 16 combos with queen 10. I'm like, oh fuck. I mean, I never thought about it like that. Where nobody talked like that.
Really? I think it was like in the Lee Jones book in like 2003 I learned about it.
I mean, very few people in my world.
Yeah, I think Terrence, you hung out with a bit of a different crowd.
With nerdier, mathier people for sure.
Yeah,
that's true.
Can we just for a minute think about if Hellmuth did this challenge that he's huddled with his coaches after each session and trying to talk through hands? How great that, like being a flying.
That would be absolutely fantastic.
Well,
It would be a good podcast.
He wouldn't work with coaches. He wouldn't. You would just, because like,
that's why you're willing to lay 12, 15 BB.
Like I said, I would bet.
I think that I'm near full power.
Yeah. I mean, I love Phil, but if you wanted to take me on in that challenge, I would do it. And I would spot him if he wanted, but I don't think he would. I don't think he would want the spot because, you know,
too proud.
He would spot me and I'll take it. I'll take it. If he wants to spot me, I'll take it too.
Last one. You're right now versus Ivey, 12,500 hands right now.
Me against Ivey? I don't know.
How fast does he learn? That would be the question, right?
Too fast. Too quickly. That's the thing about him. You know, if you play that many hands against him, like this is what he used to do to people. Back when Ivey was at his prime, everybody beat him in the beginning because he did not play GTO at all, right? He was check raising flop like 25% of the time or something ridiculous like that. He was doing a whole bunch of things that were not GTO. So in the beginning, everybody started out ahead. By the time he was done with them and figured them out, if you will, he busted everybody for the most part. I mean, there's obviously, I'm sure, a few people that beat him, but for a very long stretch, he would tell me, he's like, yeah, they get ahead like 100, 150, and then I start breaking them apart, and then, you know, it's not good for them. Once he started to figure out, like, because he's very good at this. What he was very good at is he's got a very naturally exploitative mind. So when he starts to see patterns, he can very quickly think, okay, so I see this pattern. Well, what do you do about it? He comes up with a counter strategy in real time that's subtle enough where the opponent doesn't realize what they were doing before doesn't work anymore, but it's effective enough where it shifts the EV in his favor significantly. Like that's one of the hardest things about being a hustler, playing it up, is like to beat somebody where you're doing something that they don't realize you're doing, that is printing EV. Like once they figure it out, they can look at it and go, oh shit, damn, he's doing this to me, so I can just, you know, make this one adjustment or whatever the case may be. And Ivey was just like incredibly. I still believe, like in a live scenario, he would beat all the geniuses. Like bring any of you can bring what a limitless, true to all of them. Play Ivey heads up, so you and him mano a mano at a poker table, and he will fucking destroy them. I believe. He might lose in the beginning, because that happens. But once he has that killer instinct and rips the guy apart, I don't give a fuck how GTO solver this player is. Ivey will break him down, and I truly believe that. I think online he's in trouble, right? Big time, especially where if you played on 99% of sites that have data, like WSOP, you can't really accumulate data. So, you can't really see the frequencies. Whereas if you played, and this is kind of what started to happen to him, I think, when he was playing back then is, people started to like create a database on Phil. And I was like, what the hell? They noticed some glaring, you could call them errors, except they're not errors when they're working, right? Exploits, check raising way too much on the flops, not folding enough, 3-betting like too much, whatever the case may be. And now, once you know that about a player and you have the data, I think there's a lot of guys who would rip him apart if he did it online, at the highest levels, because they're just too in tune with being able to spot the weaknesses in his game. But again, live poker, bring him on. Ivey's the GOAT as far as I'm concerned.
Well, maybe we can ask him about that in roughly 8 weeks.
In 8 weeks, yeah. Bob Masternak writes, who's going to score more points this season, Jack Hughes or Kirill Kaprizov? Daniel and I just made this bet on it, so I'm sure you can fill 15 minutes talking about Hughes. Okay, we're going to geek out on hockey for 1 minute, but Hughes looks like a stud.
I signed him in my pool. I'm going to be 61 years old, and he's still going to be under contract with my team. I signed him to a 15-year deal after his rookie year, and everyone's laughing at me. They're like, how do you sign a guy for 15 years when he had 7 goals last year? I'm like, if you looked at his totals, he was like the unlucky one. His shooting percentage was like lowest of anyone who played that many minutes, et cetera, et cetera. He beefed up, gained 14 pounds of muscle. Watching Jack Hughes skate, it reminds me of I've been watching a lot of those UFO alien things, and they talk about, propulsion, technology, where like a spaceship can go, normal aircraft has to go like this and then has to turn around this, or, an alien ship can go like this. That's how he skates. His edge work is so fast, so incredible. He looks like a spaceship out there. And once the team gets better and he has some more tools and they start putting, because he's a great passer, but they got to put the puck in the net, and they haven't done that. Today he was amazing against the Rangers. I had a feeling he was going to have a big night because they're a little more open than playing against Boston. He picked Kaprizov because he's a guy. Bob is a guy he's been running in our league since 1996. He's got the most championships in our league. I'm second, but he has 8, I think.
Wow.
He's got 3. And so nobody else has 3. So he's he had a dynasty for quite a while. He just lost Kucherov. So now his newest prize he's been waiting on for a lot of years is Kirill Kaprizov. So made that bet. Should be a fun ride. We also have another bet, which is kind of silly. I have Jason Robertson, who I have on my team. He has Nick Robertson, brother, first to 100 points. And we do some fun stuff. It's for $100 for charity. Why not?
How did 2 brothers from Florida end up being the future of hockey? Love
3
it.
brothers. There's another one coming.
Oh, there's another one coming. Wow, crazy. I got tweets.
Yeah, go.
Dan Smith. I mean, we talked about this off the top, but at Dan Smith Holler, 16,000 hands into this challenge. Both players think that they are running so badly they need to yell about it. Poker is a beautiful game. I think that perfectly encapsulates this idea, because I think it's like what we said off. You don't know how, you can't see his hands, he can't see your hands. It's everybody thinks.
I would be surprised. I would actually be surprised if he truly believes this. I would actually if you did a live.
You don't think he thinks he's running bad? So you think he's just saying it?
I don't think he's. Yeah, I think he's just doing it for lulz. I think he's just
for trolls. I mean, he is. He. It's not past him
because it's he has admitted before, during periods that I was quote unquote running bad, which obviously that was a lot more so in the first 12,000 hands. Since then, I've been able to win back some of the money. But he has mentioned it a few times in the past. He doesn't like to talk about luck, obviously, because I think, like I said, ultimately, it's ego related for both of us to a certain degree, right? You put your, you come in there, you want to win, you want to do well. And for him, I think he takes it, and I have not asked him this, but I think he takes it as a personal slight when I talk about luck, because I think he, perceives that as me saying, the only reason I'm losing is bad luck. And I don't say that. I never said that. I think he is a better player. But what I have said is, I think that I've been unlucky. I mean, I think I'm supposed to be losing, mind you, but I think I'm supposed to be losing less overall. had the cards broken even. But again, I don't really believe that he thinks. Maybe he does. I don't know. I find it. If he does, I'd hope that he puts up $1 million and makes me this bet, because I really don't think there's any chance I could lose it.
Galfond responded something like this. I don't have it in front of me, but he's like, it's something to the effect of, this is why heads-up challenges will never end, because I think both sides will agree this very often. And it's true. It's a very natural human thing. Like, it's to believe that you were the unluckier. I mean, and it's why like poker is a better gambling game than chess. Like, nobody's gonna go up to Magnus Carlsen and just be like, oh yeah, like I could have beat that guy. Like, he just got real lucky. Like, I mean, that's just silly. Even fights, like physical fist fight, MMA fights that I have had and lost, I would have taken a rematch the very next day. Like the fight in 2017 I had against Keegan Oliver, like, he took me down and he whipped my ass. I would have fought his ass again the next day, because I would have been like, there was stuff I could do different. I didn't do this. I could have done this. I could have done this better. I should have won that. It's wild, but like.
Speaking of chess, I got invited to play in the Pog Championships this year. It's a big freaking.
I saw your thing with Nakamura. That was great. I've never been interested in studying chess, but I was super. I enjoyed watching Nakamura teach you chess. That was great.
Yeah, he gave me a lesson, and I'm basically like all the guys that sort of run the thing. They all kind of chip in. My next lesson is actually on Thursday, and this one's with Levy Rosman, who apparently is like the gambit master, and I like playing the gambits. And a gambit, for those who don't know chess, is when you basically purposely give your opponent like a lead. Or you give them a piece, like you say, here, take my pawn, And the idea is that you get better position so you can, win the game there. With the Danish gambit, the one that I use, which he did the video on, it's actually very aggressive because I give up 2 pawns right off the bat. Just hand them over. But then I have like 2 bishops lined up and a pawn in the middle, really like in a great position from a development perspective. And the idea is to win the games quickly. It's a 10-minute blitz format. I'm actually getting kind of excited for it. There's a whole bunch of celebrities that I don't know, because they're like YouTube-y. I know Rainn Wilson from The Office. He's playing. And I can't remember who else. But I'm nervous. I was like, I'm super nervous because I suck. I feel like I'm getting worse. Like this weekend I practice, I feel like I'm getting worse. It's like I forget stuff. I'm like, I just miss things. Like, oh, fuck, took my queen. Shit. That's like the biggest thing when you play 10-minute games. But it's going to be fun. I'm going to try my best. He said that he thought I was like, top 3, top 4 in the field. And I'm like, no way. Because I'm like, I don't think I'm very good. But I'm getting better. It's fun. I mean, I really shouldn't be playing chess right now because I'm supposed to be studying poker. But I've been doing both, and fantasy hockey. Life is good,
Read the book Range. It'll tell you like different things are good for your brain development. At NZ34 tweeted at all of us. It's a tweet I barely understand, but it's episode of 91 of Dat Poker Podcast is the first I ever watched. Only ever used the podcast. Feedback. Producer Ross sounds cool on pod, but looks like a nerdy crim being hunted by procedural cop at T-Chan Poker. Didn't know I looked like a procedural cop. Don't know if that's a compliment or not. I have no idea. And A. Schwartz Poker looks like. What's that?
I said excuse me.
Yes. At A. Schwartz Poker looks like Ben Roethlisberger. Daniel, please beat Doug. Hashtag poker.
I don't feel like looking like Ben is a compliment. I feel bad now.
It's all of these things are unclear, but the man is like a professional athlete. Like, I don't know much about Ben Roethlisberger, but like
he's barely a professional athlete. He's out of shape. I mean, he's a great quarterback. But come on.
You gotta like wrap some parts up of your body. You gotta be wearing like a neck brace after. Yeah. He's famous for pretending he's injured.
Okay.
I'm getting
Sam Grafton at Squid Poker. It's the kind of Sunday where any spew from a reg gets excused with, "Oh, he probably has a boatload of crypto." What a great time for the poker community. I love it. We're all getting we hit 40K. We swung back to 35K. I don't think anybody's too upset about that.
I do think something's funny that this was a Joey Ingram tweet or somebody, I think talking about like, cause how we talk about the rolling thing where everyone like rolls a number. Mm-hmm. It's like the new way to just sort of like brush off like a bad play is to just call it like it's low frequency. Like, cause the solver will do like pretty much fucking anything like 1% of the time. Yeah. So like then you look it up in a solver and you did this crazy fucking thing and it's like, well, no, solver says it's okay because it does it
2% of the time. Yeah.
Does it like 0.08% of the time. So yeah, solver approved that you're supposed to move in there. That's absolutely great. So theoretically, when you're using solvers, you're supposed to, for the most part, when there's like stuff that says like 1 or 2%, you probably don't want to do that one too often.
Bart Hansen tweeted, got a lot of responses. It said, "Who's old enough to say that Chris Moneymaker got them into playing poker?" And then he has the putting up his hand emoji. Matt Clark had the best response of all the ones that I saw. It said, "Good reminder to be thankful it wasn't David Singer who won."
Is that because David's cranky or was cranky or is somewhat miserable?
I mean, there's some angle shooting incidents too. Like,
maybe.
It's just safe to say that we ran good on the Ambassador one.
Is he the guy who was on like the Poker Center, one of the Poker Wire podcasts with Joe Seabach back in the day?
I think he was a host.
I don't know. I can't remember who that was.
Did he really?
I can't remember. Let me find a picture of him. I'm thinking of a guy with long black hair.
Oh yeah, no, he hung around with that crew.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember. For some reason, I'm just thinking about one time he talked about why you never see baby pigeons on that podcast.
I mean, I mostly remember when he tried to like totally angle shoot like an amateur player really, really hard. Back when we had those weird cell phone rules. You guys remember this when you had like your weird cell phone rule where like if you picked up your phone and you looked at it, your hand was dead or something like that. He just tried to get like some amateur player just get his hand killed or something like in the middle of a giant pot for it, and it's left a bad taste in my mouth.
It's the guy who I was thinking of.
It is. Yeah. Not any of the other guys in suits.
No.
All right, let's move on. We got one voicemail. Let's squeeze that in and then wrap it up.
Okay.
Andrew's got some learning to do.
Yeah, true.
Go over some hands.
Email number 1.
Hello, DAT Poker Podcast. Not the show, by the way. Just wanted to say a quick thing. The World Series of Poker main events on recently. And as quite a big poker fan myself, listen to all the podcasts.
Did
you guys hear that?
I think it was really poorly covered. I hardly knew about it, and I'm a poker fan, so I don't know what non-poker fans or casuals had any chance of seeing it. And it made me think, the likes of Poker Go, obviously it's good if you're a hardcore poker fan, but if you're not, the casuals can't find shows like High Stakes Poker, like the World Series of Poker main events. I didn't find poker until 2009 in the UK, and I fell in love with poker from watching the YouTube broadcasts of the main events, the old broadcasts, the old high stakes pokers. I think Poker Go need to stop being behind the paywall and release all content on their YouTube and to take like ad revenue so people can discover poker. It's all in good releasing one episode and trying to get people into pay to watch. It's going to put people off, and poker's dying for that reason. Poker Go, they even claimed in one of my videos I actually did a commentary over one of Negreanu's hands. And I thought that was allowed because I added my own opinions and things like that. But YouTube strikes me copyright. So they want it all in-house. Great what they do, Poker Go, but if you want to grow poker, get from behind the paywall. Goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to monetize, content. One of them is to be behind a paywall. And I don't know that they owe anybody other than themselves or their investors or whatever, the owners, the best way to make money. Is it better to have the Poker Go content out there on YouTube and streaming? Sure, absolutely. But if it doesn't make sense for them, business wise, why would they need to do that?
I can answer because I actually know what's going on here. Not that you didn't. No, you actually know. Go ahead, finish out. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, Carrie's a huge poker fan, and Carrie Katz, who owns Poker Go, and I'm sure he makes consideration about what's best for the game, but also, he's not going to lose money doing it. That's all I was really going to say.
Yeah. So here's what happened with Poker Go, right? The original idea, the growth of it, and the realizations and the adjustments that were necessary to keep it afloat and to keep producing shows like this, right? Initially, the idea was to create a new poker network, right? Similar to what you see like the tennis channel, the golf channel, the NHL channel, and you have a poker channel on TV. So we went through the traditional old school kind of methods of trying to, get placed on TV. And then, you talk about getting advertising revenue and whatever. And the dollars and cents just did not make sense. It just didn't work. And the world has changed so much. It's evolved so much that most people like a lot of people consume their television. They don't watch TV, they're getting it through apps. They're watching it different ways and things like that. So in order to, get enough revenue to keep the thing afloat and to try to grow, it was basically like required to figure out a new way because advertising dollars don't cut it. There's just not enough there. So they made the switch to the paywall idea, and now the intention here, now the important thing is like, well, if you have a paywall and everybody else is putting out your shit for free, why would anybody pay for it, right? Like, what's exclusive about it if anybody can get it for any point? So what they do is they give away some bits for free, so that you can sort of get a taste. And if that's very common for a lot of different things that they do. You watch the movie channels, like watch this movie for free this week, and then like you subscribe later or whatever the case would be, free week trial. So it was really just necessary to keep it afloat. And when you think of Poker Go, I think they're one of the few companies, in poker that are actually doing a lot of good to try to keep it revived. Like his misunderstanding is the idea that like, well, if Poker Go wasn't doing this anymore, poker would boom, but it wouldn't, because nobody would be paying for it to go on TV. So it wouldn't even exist in any fashion, really. It would be very limited. So Poker Go actually expands the audience. And obviously Poker Go, people that are going to pay the $10 or whatever it is a month, they're going to be, for the most part, diehards. And I get it. Like, you're not going to reach as many, average folk, if you will. But them making deals, sponsorship deals with like, whether it's CBS or NBC, to have some programming on there as well. Like you see the Super High Roller Bowl on there, and different, countries, different types of deals that you can make. It's a lot more complicated than simply like, hey, take it behind the paywall. All right. And then how are we going to pay for it? You know what I mean? Like it's not a question of greed. It isn't a question of like trying to screw anyone over. It's a question of existing in really the only way that you could long-term keep it afloat.
Yeah, I think caller mentioned something important. I missed his name, but he mentioned this is when he got into poker in 2009. 2009 and 2021 are night and day different worlds with poker, and we've all been around it for this entire century. And in 2009, we were still riding the crest of Moneymaker, Raymer, Hatcham, the glory days of poker on ESPN. That was still a thing. So people were still interested in creating poker content for television. Not only that, as Daniel said, people are moving away from cable satellite television, terrestrial, to streaming services, right? We're seeing that now. More people are cutting the wire. They're going to, Netflix and Amazon Prime, and there's I have UFC Fight Pass and Poker Go and all this kind of stuff. I have everything a la carte, and I think that's going to be the most common way going forward. And so, yeah, you're just like putting poker on TV in the year 2021 not only is expensive and not very viable, it's also not very useful, like in terms of drawing new eyeballs. We had a period that sort of 2003 to 2011, just before Black Friday era, where, poker was ubiquitous on TV. And, every time you walked by a bar, if it was like 1 p.m. in the afternoon, people would be there. I would walk in like just downtown Vancouver and like look in the window, and like there's some poker tournament. I've literally never heard of this poker tournament. I don't know where it's being played. I don't know who any of the people even are on TV. It's not even like it's the well-known players, but it's just like 8 people playing poker on TV. And I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where poker is very niche. But there is still, of course, a fine line. Like the caller is right. It is harder for people to access this stuff and give it a free trial, because not everybody just wants to sign up for a thing and pay $10 a month. But what you have to do, if you're Poker Go and if you're the people trying to grow poker, is you have to create content that goes viral, right? Like you have, and that's on the everybody from Poker Go to GG Poker and Poker Stars, and everybody who has Poker News, anybody who has any sort of vested interest in poker growing as a game, they have to create content that grows viral and continues to get traction throughout the general world, and not just like the hardcore poker community. But until then, like, yeah, as Daniel said, who's gonna front the money to run high stakes poker on TV? Who's gonna pay for all of this to run? Like who's even, maybe even the World Series of Poker, the biggest brand, like who even knows whether that necessarily holds on and people are interested enough to watch this to pay, for people to pay for its production. It seems like, yeah, it's not ideal. In a perfect world, poker would just be on ESPN all the time. That would be great for us. We'd all be lying in our pockets, but that's not the reality we live in 2021.
I will disagree with the poker not being on TV anymore. At least here in Canada, there's a decent amount of poker still on TV with hockey blackouts and stuff like that. it's usually on one of those channels.
But they're still playing old stuff, right? I assume,
right, yeah, super old, but still, I like when you're walking downtown and you look at.
Well, that's because nobody else. That just almost proves the point. Nobody else is making any stuff,
right?
Other than the WPT. Obviously, this year has been challenging with COVID, so it's not like you're going to have a lot of new stuff. But really, a lot of people look at like when the Big Game and Poker After Dark was on TV and High Stakes Poker, and you're like, oh man, why'd they cancel those shows? I'm like, because of Black Friday, right? Because those were infomercials. That show wasn't making money. They didn't make look at a show, it's on TV. It doesn't make money. You lose, you're paying for basically commercial. It's no different when you watch the poker at 2 a.m. or whatever it was. No different than seeing like Ginsu Slicer for 1995 that you would normally see. Instead, they put poker. You're like, shit, this is good. Get pretty good ratings. But it was the sites on the back end who had a vested interest to advertise their product to make money that way. Otherwise, there's just no model. Who was advertising with them? The fucking My Pillow guy? I mean, I don't know. Like we had nobody.
All right. 17,000 hands through, Daniel, 25,000 hands. That leaves 8. I'm a math guy. You guys are averaging 500 hands a session or coming close to there. Maybe that's 16 sessions and you're doing 3 weeks. So we got a month of this left. What do you think? How do you see this playing out?
Well, the last 2 weeks we played exactly 2,000 hands each week. I've sort of been targeting that as like a good number to play, 750, 750, 500. I rage quit the first one, like 608. So we'll probably play like 700 or 800 here. It depends how I feel. And, if I do get like later in the session, I start to get a little dizzy from the beep, 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 beep. Like it starts to get to me after a while. So I need a little bit of a shorter sessions, benefit me or whatever. I'm not in a rush necessarily, but like I have fallen back a little bit in terms of like on the track of like the comeback. My thought process is, again, when I was stuck, whatever I was, like the big number is, all right, win one buy-in per 500 hand session and you can win the match, right? Right now, that would have me lose by a nose, right? So we need to have a good next couple sessions to get back on that track. I think it would be pretty epic if we can go into the last 500 hands and it's like he's up 40K or something like that. And I got one session to just go, all right, buddy, bomb the fucking way. Right?
I think we've seen that happen before.
I'm all in. It's actually different than the PLO, right? Because with the PLO, one of them needs to get back, in the game, but you can only raise pot. You can't just go all in, right? Here with the no limit, it opens up some weird opportunities where, if it were to get that close, we're like, all right, well, I flopped something. Let's go all in, it's all in, whatever. Like
the most you can bet or raise is the size of a pot.
Theoretically, for example, let's say there's, 100 hands left in the challenge. And I got a spot where I'm like, all right, well, he's always calling here, but I got 30% equity, right? I can go all in here, try to catch my hand. And if I do, I win the challenge. So basically puts me at a 3-1 dog versus try to like grind it out the last 100 hands. There could be some interesting decisions where you have to give away EV, an actual hand, in order for the side bets and everything else. And just to like win the challenge by $1. Because if I won the challenge by $1, I will throw a fucking party on the strip. Like I don't care about COVID or nothing. I'll get everybody the vaccine. $1. I'll take the fucking loony or whatever it is, and I frame it and everything like that. I don't need to win $1 million. I just need to win $1. That's it. I'll be happy.
I'm upset because I bet the under before January 31st the challenge would end.
That's dead.
That money's going in Timex's bank account as usual.
Yeah. I think with you. I mean, maybe just for you. How much money did you bet?
I don't know, like $100.
All right, well, maybe just for you, I might go fucking bonkers and play like a 5,000 hand session.
24 hours.
Make him sweat it a little.
I mean, Doug has to, sign off on that.
Well, he doesn't quit.
It takes two to tango. He refuses to quit. Oh, okay.
Someone asked him this question, like, what would it take for you to quit? He said,
all right. Well, get the pee bottles out.
He actually said, a heart attack.
Nuclear war.
Like an actual heart attack was his real answer. So he wants to play longer sessions. He likes playing deeper because he studied a lot more than I have. So that gives him a big advantage. So I heard him talking because I watch his post games as well. He mentioned something that is interesting. He prefers playing deeper because he has a bigger edge. But
you want to play deeper now because you're behind.
Well, yeah, and experience, right? Because now if you get aces against kings, for example, or something along those lines, instead of losing 100 big blinds, you lose like 4 buy-ins, 3-4 buy-ins playing that deep.
Good. All right. That's going to wrap it up for the show. Thanks to everybody getting together. Thanks to you out there for watching. And we will talk to you soon.